Hello, everyone. My name is Priya Bhutani. I'm the founder and CEO of RegDesk. Thank you for joining us today. The goal for today's discussion is to understand the new regulations in Brazil that impact medical devices and that these regulations came into effect this year. A brief intro into RegDesk. We have a proprietary technology that allows regulatory leaders like yourselves to do three things. One, obtain real-time alerts on regulatory changes that impact your products in target markets. Two, gain product-specific insights and intelligence from multiple local experts faster than all existing solutions. And three, understand the risks of each market, providing you with significant competitive advantage. We're a trusted intelligence source for many global medtech companies, including several Fortune 100 companies. With us today, we have a leading expert from Brazil, Mr. Juliano Oliveira. Mr. Juliano Oliveira is the director of a large regulatory consulting firm in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He holds degrees in management from Yale University and Carnegie Mellon. Mr. Oliveira has over 16 years of experience in the life sciences industry. He specializes in quality systems and regulatory registrations of pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and cosmetic products. He also has experience with international audits and global regulatory systems. Mr. Oliveira is a renowned speaker and has trained many internal auditors. Before we begin our discussion this morning, I'd like to turn our attention to our attendees. Thank you for joining us. At the end of this meeting, we'll be holding a brief Q&A. We encourage your participation, so please refer to the chat button at the top of your screen. In the interest of time, please submit your questions throughout the course of our talk, and we'll try to address as many of your questions as we can. Also, you'll be prompted to fill out a survey at the end of the webinar. We would appreciate your feedback. The survey shouldn't take more than a minute to fill out. In today's conversation with Mr. Oliveira, we'll discuss the new changes to the medical device registrations, RDC 40 and RDC 45, and then we will end with some parting tips. Mr. Oliveira, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Let's begin by getting an overview of the new changes to the device regulations in Brazil.
He is for the good reputation. And well, when you've spoken about the changes in Brazil is absolutely terrible because Brazil is a nightmare and change very fast in all the legislations. But well, the first thing his change is spoken specifically for products of the class 1 and 2 of the risk. Well, the last change in the legislation, the principal legislation is RDC 40. The Brazil make a change for make more easier this process of the regulation. Sometimes people before is like do you register the products class 1 and 2? Is the same thing. Do you make products for class 3 and 4? Is the same process, the registration. Now, the Brazil changed with this new rule, RDC 40, he's changed that. It's not more so difficult and it's not more so complicated. For example, before is like you need all the documentation for a process of the registration, like tests, analysis, studies, and all these tests, analysis, and studies making in Brazil. And the rule, the legislation for you make this regulation in Brazil is the same for class 3 and 4. Now, his change for classes 1 and 2 is not more a process of the registration, it's a process of the cadastre. This is a name in Brazil, cadastre. The Brazilian word is cadastro. Now, it is not more necessary to make a process for registration. What exactly changed of the registration for cadastre? What exactly changed? The facility of you provide the paperwork. Now you have a script for follow. Before I don't have. Now you have a script for follow. It's more easier for present is more Q and answers for you make is a formulary with the Q and answers, and then it's absolutely more easy for you prepare, and it's not more necessary the testings and analysis and all that making in Brazil. It's a very important thing. is not more necessary making in Brazil, but your company need present these tests for the Anvisa. The difference is not more necessary make these tests in Brazil. And the level of the acceptance now of these tests is a 99% if you follow the international rules for tests and analysis. This is the most bigger change in the new resolution for the registration of products in Brazil, class 1 and 2.
Perfect, perfect. So if you haven't noted, please note that this is regarding RDC number 40. It impacts classes 1 and 2. So per the new regulations, the good news is that local testing will not be required as long as you follow the international guidelines. And also the process is easier. So you have to provide less information. And the big thing is you're saving a lot of time and effort and money because no more local testing. Brazil will accept a lot of the international testing and the test data that comes from your country of origin. Now, last time we chatted, you also mentioned something about the stability testing. I think it'll be good to just pinpoint that because a lot of companies, depending on your product and sterilization methods and stability testing is big, especially with climate change. Can you address that real quickly?
Great. This is a good question. I wanna spoken about two aspects, if you give me this permission. Not just about the stability test, but about the time for make that. This is very important for the companies. Let's begin with your question with the stability tests. Well, it's a very important to say that many companies have a concern very strong for put your tests in Brazil because the climatic zone in the world is completely different. You have a climatic zone for Asia, another climatic zone for something countries of the Europe, another zone climatic in the US. Well, is the global is very different according your region in the global. But in Brazil is a peculiarity because Brazil have the four, have all the climatic zone because Brazil stay located in the tropical of the Cancer and tropical of the Capricorn in the middle. And then we have the four climatic zones and say, well, the companies look for, well, how the zone climatic I can use from Brazil? Let me answer this question. You can use all. The Brazil don't have a specific regulation when you're talking about of the climatic zones or when you're talking about the stability tests for everybody, for all products. I'm talking about of the implants, cosmetics, sanitizers, for everybody, for all products. Don't have a specific regulation in Brazil spoken about the climatic zone. But it's a very important say, I think. If you use a factory, it's a very important respect your ranges. If you say if your product is have a range of the temperature minus 5 graus Celsius and 30 graus Celsius, is a very important. You present your stability tests course enter this regulation correctly and respect that. Is a very important. The Anvisa respect much the your properly tests present to Anvisa.
Okay, great. So again, another point. I find this is a valid point. It'll probably apply to a lot of our participants today. So if your product, if you do run stability tests, what we understand is make sure you are testing for the extreme conditions on both ends, because Brazil is one of those unique regions where you could have cold temperature depending on where in Brazil you are to very hot and humid temperature. So it looks like Anvisa, if you're looking for acceptance from Anvisa in terms of stability testing, again, make sure that you have extreme cases tested for your product.
Absolutely, it's a very important say. In extreme cases, it's a very important say his course. You need to follow exactly the part. For example, if your product is a refrigerated product, for example, course, all the demands for this type of the product is required for Anvisa, like conservation, transportation, and all these things in Brazil. All that is, but if you have a big range, you don't have a trouble.
Perfect. So can we talk real quickly about, so if I am from the US and I have my test data for class 1 and 2 that now I present to Anvisa, it has to be, of course, translated into Portuguese, correct? All my test data and reports, protocols and reports?
Good question. You don't, if you tests or analysis or I'm talking about now about your in general your tests, studies, everything about your product stay in English, Spanish, or Portuguese, Portugal is not necessary to translate.
Okay.
It's a very important say, do you need to translate just documents of just technical documents? For example, your technical dossier course is absolutely necessary to stay in Portuguese. Certificate, your free sale, for example, is necessary to have your original free sale and credited translate for your free sale. In general, just a couple documents, just a little documents like letter of authorization for you authorize a Brazilian company represent you. This is absolutely necessary to translate, but tests and analysis, documents, paperwork for improve characteristics of your product is not necessary to translate if you stay in Portuguese, Portugal, Portuguese, Brazil, Spanish, or in English.
Okay, perfect. So that's actually good news too. Save some trouble in translating lots of costs related to translations. Okay, so we just talked about RDC number 40, and I have one last question. Can you actually, you mentioned Cadastra, and you talked about how the new forms will be abbreviated, right? So can you talk a little bit more about, are we just providing less information to Anvisa? What's changed in terms of so test data, we realize the big thing is local test data. You don't have to do local testing. Great. But then you also mentioned something about the forms, and the form is much more abbreviated and easier. Can you just quickly touch on that again?
Yeah, of course. Let me talking about this new form. With this new resolution, you can make a download directly in the Visa of this paperwork. Of course, remember, it's easier. It's like a Q and answers, but it's a very important you have a local consultant for helping you with that. It's not so. When I talk and say it's more simple, it's not so. It's just more simple in general for Brazilians. But what did change? For example, now is more specifically, and the questions is directly. Is a different before is you don't have, for example, parameters. For example, in the question simple, describe your product. Mm-hmm. Now it's a simple, oh, my product is for using, and I don't know, let me give an example, like is a radiology equipment. Mm-hmm. Is for make radiologists in patients with the terminal tests and so forth and so forth. Now here's more in this formulary is absolutely specific. Describe your product, finality, use is you have points for say, well, and then before you don't have these parameters. You don't know exactly the information the Anvisa needs. Oh, describe. I can describe in one phrase or in a big text. Right. I can type many things and put a big information. Now the Anvisa put points in that. Well, and then describe, instruction of use of the product, applicability, I'm going to say side effects, and right. Put points for you type a simple answers. This is it's more quickly, more easy, yeah. and more faster for you make.
Right.
Before this is not happened. Is you will say I need this and this and this information. Make yourself.
This is again, I think it's a great change. It'll definitely help a lot of first timers. And I know in Visa, it's such a long process to get your product registered. So this is actually wonderful to have a form. So it looks like it's, and Visa's done a really good job specifying exactly what type of information they need about the product and IFUs.
Have one more a point very important for spoken about that. Very important. For example, before, do you need of the GMP inspections of the Brazil for this for make registration the products class 1 and 2? Now it's not more necessary GMP inspections for make the registration class 1 and 2. It's a very important, just for products class 1 and 2. This new resolution, this new law, finish with that. The companies can come in directly from Brazil.
Wow. So we have abbreviated more, we actually have a form now that we fill out, which translates into an application. And that too, it's not generic. And Visa's actually done a good job identifying exactly information they need, no local testing and no GMP inspection. So big change. Hope all class 1, class 2 products have noted these changes. Now we can proceed to the next change, because that's also a big change, and it's impacting some other device classifications. So I'll let you cover that.
Absolutely. In the last years, I see that Brazil changed much your rules for attract the international companies. Today, if you have a holder company in Brazil, it's more easier for the regulation your products, like if you compare with the Brazilians. Believe me, it's more easier for a foreigner regulating your products in Brazil using a holder, like if you compare with the Brazilians, creation a company and regulating your products. Believe, but this is a part of the Brazil want to make a good relationship for entire world.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, so now we can move in the direction of the RDC number 45, right? So there's a big change there as well.
Absolutely. Well, the RDC 4 and 5 make slow down. No, it's not slow down. It's down. Sorry, my English people. Down the taxes. Well, Brazil is nice for entire world for have the higher taxes for make everything. If you protocol a process when you put your papers work inside of the Anvisa, you pay taxes for that, and the taxes in Brazil is absolutely higher. Well, Brazil see that. Well, it was very higher for Brazilians and for foreign companies. Let's get down this taxes, and then the Brazil for the first time, and I believe in first time in your life, is change the taxes for down. Understand this is good for Brazil and put the taxes for down. The reduction is a more or less 30% for Minas now. And then is a very interesting. For example, let me give an example of that. When I'm talking about of the products class 3 and 4, you need of the Brazilian GMP inspection. I'm saying Brazilian GMP inspection because the Anvisa, the agent's regulatory in Brazil, goes to the origin country for make the inspection of the GMP according the Brazilian laws. This is a very important thing. It's not according your GMP of your country. It's according the Brazilian laws, the Brazilian rules. If you're if you have cosmetic products, you need to follow the legislation for cosmetics. If you is medical device companies, you need to follow the medical device companies law. And Brazil goes for check that according to Brazilian regulations in your country, in your factory. Well, but for make that, you need to pay a tax. Well, before the tax is approximately, I'm talking about on generic numbers because you have a fee, banks, taxes, and other things. But let's talking about just the taxes of the Visa. Before is a 180,000, approximately 180,000 reais you make is approximately $36,000 for make this visit. Now it's changed. Think after the resolution, now he's a 7,200 reais is approximately $24,000 for make that. The reduction of the 36 for 24,000 is absolutely expressive for the companies, and it's more easy for small companies request this is a GMP inspection for your cultures.
Great. So for class 3 and class 4 products, this is good news for you guys. The GMP inspection fees have been reduced and significant reduction, because you're talking about $10,000-$15,000 reduction. So that's good. Now, it doesn't impact the timing, right? The timing of the inspection, all of the other parameters of the inspection remain the same. It's just the cost has been reduced per the new resolution, correct?
Good question. It's not change the time is a very important say. Unfortunately, in Brazil, when you request the GMP inspections, this take much time. Have two ways of to reduce the times in Brazil. First is using directly a local agent or a local consultant. This reduce much. Many people try using the MDSAP, is a medical devices single audit program. You can contract a third party in your culture, like a TUV, BSI, SGS, or another third party. And this course, this third party, he needs a script in the visa and the another cultures around. This third party make the inspection for you. Many people say, "Oh, this save time." No save time, and please don't save your money, because it's more expensive, absolutely more expensive. The third party need win money for make that. It's a question of the intelligence. If you contract a third party for make that for you, it's more expensive, of course. But many companies don't imagine that and pick and contract the third party for make this inspection. But is a things as a very aspects in this point is important, say, for talking about the time. First, the inspection is more fast. Of course, you contract the third party today. Tomorrow, his go to your company make this inspection. But the line in Brazil is the same. when this third party finish the audit, he needs to send the report for Anvisa for make the paperwork for protocol in Anvisa. He's needed back to Brazil and get in the same line of your request directly in Brazil. In this case, if you request directly from Brazil, it's more fast. And you go to the directly for the list, and you save time. The minimum, the 30 to 19 days, you save time. In general, for begin and finish this process, in general, is approximately 80 months for begin the process of the GMP and finish when you publish your results in Official Gazette in Brazil. Oh, is approved, is not approved. It's more or less 80 months. This is the first way. You can use in the MDSAP. I not recommend that. I recommend using a local agent for make that. Using a local consultant for make that. And the second way, you can, I'm talking about the MDSAP. And the second way, you can save money using the Brazilian law, the justice law. It's very common. Don't worry with that. You say, "Oh, I cannot go to the court in Brazil for make the inspection more quickly. Oh, it's a much job." No, in Brazil, this is a practical, very simple. And for example, me, like Constance of the RegDesk, make that for many companies. I make this job for another companies. This you come in, you provide a lawyer. This lawyer get in with process in the Brazilian court. Is a very fast thing. It's a take more. You wait in the preliminary time. Is 2 months, and after that, the Anvisa is obligated to schedule for you your visit. It's a very common, is indolor, and don't make it's a common in Brazil. I try found the word, but it's a very simple process for make in Brazil. This is the second way for you make the things more fast for in case of the inspection of the GMP.
Well, that's good to know. So if you're class 3, class 4, I mean, in the US, it's so common practice to go and go with BSI and TUV and these major third parties, but it sounds like it's a better option to seek advice. And at RegDesk, if you know anything about RegDesk and if you've worked with us, you know we are big on this, and we can't relay this message enough to say local experts truly have the insight. You just learned about this insight of taking the route of the court, which you wouldn't know of unless you seek local expertise to guide you with the local processes and approvals. So that being said, we'll now open the floor to some questions. Now we have received a couple questions which I would like to address. So one is, the question came and the question says, how to get a clearance in visa customs on a timely basis. So it sounds like their distributor has been struggling to get customs clearance. Do you have any tips on that? How can they get clearance?
You can repeat this question again in other words, please.
Okay. So they said how to clear and visa customs on a timely basis.
The time for make inspection or time for make
customs? So it sounds like their product's already gone through GMP inspection and it's now at the customs.
Oh, you talk the sum of the GMP more plus the time of the registration.
Well, no. So this sounds like their product has already been approved. The GMP inspection all clear. Now their product is actually held at the customs in Brazil. So is there a process to get the product outside of the customs? So when the product gets shipped to Brazil, how to get it cleared faster from the customs?
Yeah, it's a very important before you begin all the process with your product. When I say all: commercialized, transportation, negotiation with the distributors, all that is a very important. You first finish all your process of the regulatory affairs in Brazil. All. When I say all, I say registration of the products, GMP if your product is a class 3 or 4, regulation with the border, all this ready for you begin your business in Brazil. Why I say that? Because it takes much time for you to make that. Well, you have a ways and pathways for you follow when you save much time. When we're talking about of the local consultant. This is I think is a very important. The RegDesk is a very important. When I say that before, is not necessary to use. Do you think much? If you have a local person who's spoken, understand the legislation and spoken the local language and act directly with the agents directly for you, doesn't matter if Brazil, India, America, or another culture. It's more easy. Why? You have a person directly for spoken. You don't have spoken with a third party. This third party spoken with the agents spoke with the third party goes with you, and if you have a replica or taplica, it's insane using this form. You take much time, and well, if you make that using a local, you save much money and time for make that. And you, when I say before, is a very important for you prepare your process in the correct way, and you can save time if you make that. I'm sorry. Sometimes the words absolutely escape me. My English is not so good. I'm sorry.
I think we'll all agree that you've done just fine. Well, we're running out of time, and we want to respect all of your time because I know you're all at work. Thank you for taking 30 minutes to get an update on the new regulations, the changes. We found out that Class 1 and 2, it's a lot of good news for Class 1 and 2 products, and some good news regarding GMP fee reduction for Class 3 products. So keep that in mind as you proceed with your market entry. Again, please, you'll be prompted to a a survey. Please fill that out. We'd appreciate that. And if you have any questions regarding your product, specific questions regarding your entry to Brazil, please contact us and we'd be happy to engage Mr. Oliveira and perhaps get you some other expertise as well. Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Oliveira, for your time and for the insights. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.